Hello and welcome to your real estate journey, expert tips for buyers and sellers. I am Dolly Lopez, your realtor and broker in the state of Florida and Kentucky. And today is Thursday, and Thursday we are full of information, legal information, and we are joined by Valerie, one of my favorite real estate attorneys here in the state of Florida. Hopefully, she'll be in other states soon. But as of right now, we are in Florida. Welcome,
Yeah,
Valerie. How are you?
good. Thank you so much for having me, Dolly, and having all your followers here. Super excited to be here.
I'm very excited to talk today about legal stuff like we do every single Thursday. So if you haven't, this is the first episode you are watching, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you'll be able to see all the informations that we have to share with you. So today it's going to be short and sweet. We're sweet and short. And then we're going to talk about addendums to a contract. What is an addendum? What's the importance of an addendum? And how we can make sure it's actually correct to make sure we get to the closing table with properly without any hiccups. So, Valerie, what's an addendum to a contract?
So, an addendum to a contract is when we're adding different terms to the contract. And more than likely, we're going to see it when we're adding credits. For instance, the seller's giving a credit, maybe the other situation, buyer's giving a credit, or we're extending deadlines. There's a multitude of different reasons why we'll do addendums. But an addendum is to basically add terms to a contract, right? So we need to make sure that when we do addendums, that we do it correctly and that we do it properly in order for it to attach and become legally binding between the buyer and the seller.
Perfect. So basically, to tag along there, an addendum is just to modify anything that you have originally agreed to within a contract. So if you want to extend closing date, then we have an addendum. If you want to do anything besides that original agreement, you need an addendum. And an addendum, you'll need to make sure that it's signed by the seller and the buyer, because at the end of the day, if only one person signs it, that's more of a petition. That's not legally binding. That's not getting into an agreement, not because the seller wants to do something. That means the buyer has to agree to it. So after we are under contract, we need to make sure that any modifications, it goes beyond verbal and it needs to be written. So what are some of the situations, Valerie, that you have seen regarding addendums?
Right.
That
I've seen, some issues regarding addendums and maybe they haven't been done correctly. One of the most famous ones that we dealt with just recently was a cash transaction. We had buyer and seller, neither of which were represented by realtors, which, by the way, this is the importance of having a realtor and knowing that the realtor knows what they're doing and they're going to protect you. But in this situation, there was no realtor on either side. There was an inspection that was performed, and in that inspection, there was an issue with the actual structure of the property. And there ended up being an agreement between buyer and seller whereby buyer was going to be receiving a $50,000 credit from the seller. Now, the issue comes when the addendum is being created, because buyer creates his own addendum stating that he was going to be receiving a $50,000 credit. Both buyer and seller sign that addendum. Then seller creates an addendum, same exact terms, written a little differently, but same exact terms, and saying seller was going to be providing a $50,000 credit to buyer for the day of closing, and both buyer and seller sign. So now if we're going by the writings and we're just looking at the contracts and the addendums there too, we're going to be guessing that there's going to be $100,000 in a credit from the seller to the buyer. So when I'm receiving these addendums, I'm thinking to myself, that's a lot of money. So let me call and figure it out. Luckily, both buyer and seller's true intentions were just to do the $50,000. Both buyer and seller agreed to sign a third addendum that I created stating that it was only for the $50,000 and therefore nullifying the first and second addendum because those two had added up to $100,000 and weren't done correctly. So I created a third in order to rectify that issue that we were having. so that the day of tomorrow, if anything were to happen, we have everything clear and in writing. And that's what's so important, right? With these addendums, is that no one never knows what's going to happen. And we're not just talking about what could happen during the closing or at closing. We're also talking about what can happen after closing, right?
Exactly. Yep.
So we need to make sure that it's done correctly. So if we're ever before court for whatever reason, we can just say, hey, here's an addendum signed by both parties. These were the true intentions.
Yep. And ultimately, you want to make sure, basically, what we have said, everything needs to go in writing, regardless if you are best friends selling the house one to another. Everything needs to be in writing. If there is a lender involved in a transaction and there is any sort of money exchange or price reduction or seller's credit or whatever that is, they will require an addendum. If there was an inspection done and there is some repairs that the buyer's asking the seller to complete, or the buyer's doing it themselves, you still need an addendum. You still need to make sure that everyone is aware, and it has to go in writing. So it's very important, because actually that's what's going to hold ultimately in court if it gets there. But
Right.
that's what I need to say. Anyways, so thank you, Val. Thank you so much for today. I know it was gonna be very short, but it was important for you to learn about addendums. And you can have as many as addendum as you want for different things. However, need to make sure it's properly created, because if it's not, then you could get yourself in a little mess. So
yeah,
that's just my little opinion here. Guys, thank you so much. Make sure to subscribe to our channel. Thank you, Val, for being here today, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye.
Bye, everyone.